Leslie Caldwell, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
What are the crimes that Donald Trump is being charged with?
So essentially, there are three statutes that he's accused of violating. The first one is a conspiracy statute, and the specific charge in the indictment is kind of an umbrella of all the conduct that is at issue. So interfering with the vote counting, interfering with the collection of votes, interfering with the certification of the election, and the conspiracy is to defraud the United States by essentially depriving the country of the actual election results.
Put it in context for me. How serious are these charges?
So these are probably the most serious charges that could be brought in a court in the United States. It essentially alleges that the former president tried to essentially undermine the entire election function of the entire country, focusing on the 7 states that are listed in the indictment. So it's extraordinarily serious. I think I'm sure it's unprecedented. It's a very, very serious charge. All the charges are, but the conspiracy charge in particular.
In the United States, free speech is protected by the First Amendment, so Donald Trump is allowed to lie about the election results. What turns it into a crime?
So you're entitled to lie, and the indictment even says that. You're entitled to lie about things, but what you're not allowed to do is try to get others to do your bidding. You can tell them false things and urge them to take various actions, which is what's alleged in this indictment. That's crossing the line.
Does the prosecutor have to prove that Donald Trump actually knew that the claims of election fraud were false?
So they will have to prove that he knew or had very strong reason to know that they were false. And when I say strong reason to know, if he hoped that they were true and was grabbing onto every little thing that he could to try to convince himself, that might be enough. But they're definitely going to have to prove that there was some corrupt intent in his mind when he engaged in the activities alleged in the indictment.
So when you look at the indictment, how do you think they're going to do that?
So it seems like, just from reading the indictment, that plenty of people were telling him that those claims were false. People at very high levels in the U.S. government, including the Attorney General of the United States, heads of other major agencies and cabinet secretaries, his own advisors, his own lawyers in some cases, were telling him that the claims were false. His own vice president. And apparently he himself made a few comments, some of which are listed in the indictment, about knowing that the claims were false. So I think that's how they'll do it. And we obviously don't know the entirety of the evidence. It's not all laid out in the indictment, but that's just based on what is in the indictment.
Of course, the central part of this story is the extraordinary events of January the 6th. I noticed the prosecutor here is not charging Donald Trump with inciting the January the 6th riots. Why do you think he's made that decision?
So he's not accused of inciting the riot and the attack on the Capitol, but he is accused of interfering with the certification, conspiring to interfere with the certification of the election, which of course is what happened on January 6th when the Capitol was stormed. The certification was delayed for several hours. That's what he's charged with. He's not charged with urging people to go to the Capitol and wreak havoc. But I think that they were smart not to charge him with inciting the riot, because it would be another leap to prove that not only did he say things, but that he also intended that the people would go to the Capitol building and do what they did.
One of the things that's emerged is the role of Mike Pence's evidence. Why is he so important in this indictment?
He's extremely important because, first of all, he refused to go along with what the former president wanted him to do, which was to not certify the election results. He refused to go along with it. He kept contemporaneous notes, which are quoted in the indictment, about his conversations with the former president. He is sort of uniquely positioned to know what the former president was telling him and what the former president was saying and telling him to do. He also went to the Capitol and he was witness to what went on there. So I think he's extremely important.
There's a whole group of co-conspirators, 6 of them, although not named in the indictment. What's the reason for only targeting Trump and not those co-conspirators?
I don't know what the reason is, but I suspect that the reason is because having a 7-defendant case is much more complicated and time-consuming than having a 1-defendant case. So that's not to say they'll never be charged, but I think it was smart to charge Trump by himself in this case, if part of the goal is to have the trial go in a fairly expeditious fashion.
What kind of person is the prosecutor here, Jack Smith?
So Jack is, in some ways, the perfect person for this assignment. He's very experienced, he's very smart, he's fearless, he's very careful, very thorough, likes to move efficiently and quickly, and I think he will be ready to go, probably already is ready to go in this case. And I think that the speed with which he brought the case is consistent with everything I know about him.
And how will he go with the extraordinary pressure that's going to come on him?
You know, he's done a lot of cases. This is obviously the biggest one that he will have ever done, or that probably anyone in the Justice Department has ever done. But he is not a stranger to pressure, to intimidation, to all sorts of things that will inevitably come along in this case, and some of which I understand have already begun.
You've worked in the Department of Justice, you've been a lawyer all your life. Reading this indictment now in black and white, can you still be shocked?
Unfortunately, yes, I can be shocked still, and I was somewhat shocked.